Are you ready for a show that talks sports from the fans' point of view?
We've seen Michael Jordan score 37 points a game in his era. How many could he score in today's NBA?
There's not a player out there who I'd rather have than LeBron James.
Are you ready for a show that isn't afraid to challenge anyone when it comes to sports? If Adam Silver really wanted to fix tanking in the NBA, he would stop rewarding teams by giving them the best chance to win the draft lottery.
I mean, how many times will Roger Goodell drop the ball on handling domestic violence in the NFL?
Look, athletes have every right to talk politics, but if the fans stop tuning in, that's their right.
Then you're ready for Talk Back, a podcast where two fans debate the media narrative and discuss the world of sports as we see it.
Welcome to the show.
We're back for another edition of Talk Back. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Nesbit, and with me as always is Justin Gay, your host and director of content. Justin, I know it's been a couple of weeks, and those of the listeners that know me very well, and one of them would be you, of course, us being best friends, you know me very well. You know that my son has recently had a kidney transplant. So for our listeners who has followed us on Twitter, you know that that's why we haven't recorded the past couple of weeks. We've been, in my family, in the hospital visiting him and dealing with that for the past couple of weeks. But Justin, I'm really looking forward to talking sports because there's been a lot of topics that we've texted back and forth on that we really need to hit the airwaves with this week. And that would include things like the Lakers and LeBron James, all of the fallout from the trade deadline and AD and Clutch. I know you and I and the Twitterverse really as a whole and even sportscasters have gone wild with that and really what the fallout is from that. Then we've got this post Super Bowl Robert Kraft breaking news, and we've got to talk about that. Then we get into other NFL tidbits like Antonio Brown, his trade request, more drama out of Pittsburgh, and then, of course, our buddy, number 7, Colin Kaepernick. Lots to talk about there. Then we'll flip it over to basketball and NASCAR. So a lot to talk about on this show, but Justin, I'm glad to be sitting here with you talking sports. So we've got all of that and more on the flip side of this break in episode 237 of Talk Back.
Well, let's kick off this edition of the pod with a little round of whose week has gone worse. That would be LeBron James or Robert Kraft. So let's start with LeBron James, Eric. Since we haven't got to talk in a while, I'll go ahead and get you riled up early here on this podcast because as we record this show on Tuesday night, your Los Angeles Lakers, i.e. the Los Angeles LeBron James, are currently 29-31. They are sitting tied with the Timberwolves right now in the 11th spot. Timberwolves are percentage points ahead somehow, but basically the Lakers are still about 3 games out of 8th place. Eric, what in the world is going on here in LA? Things were cruising along pretty well. We get to Christmas Day. LeBron has the groin injury, and it seemed like from that point on, all hell is broken loose in LA. And now the Lakers can't even go into Memphis and get a win. What in the world's happening to this team?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, you know, they're not necessarily my LeBron James-led Lakers, but, of course, you know, LeBron James being a huge fan of his, Lakers I could give or take. I still think LeBron looks really goofy in that purple uniform. I just can't wrap my head around it, even still a whole season in now. And when I say the whole season in, I mean, Justin, the main part of where you're going with that is that there's only 22 games left in this NBA regular season. And so if you're the Los Angeles Lakers sitting at 29-31, you're looking up at 8th place and currently held by the San Antonio Spurs. They're 3 games out of that position. And then you start to get above that. You're talking about teams like the Rockets and the Blazers and the Thunder. There's probably no catching those teams at this point. The Clippers, for some odd reason, have decided that they're still all in on trying to make the playoffs and maybe give up compensatory picks that they might have. Either way, the Lakers are really looking at a road that's going to be tough going in the season-long race for those playoffs. And for LeBron James, missing the playoffs, to me, as a fan of his, it would just seem really, really odd for him not to be in the playoffs. I mean, Justin, we haven't seen him not in the finals for 8 years, let alone not being in the playoffs. So I think to your point, where we're really at is that there's a major fallout from two things. One, when LeBron James was injured and out for a number of weeks with that groin injury, you saw a young team once again floundering just like they were last year. Remember, this isn't that different of a team than it was before, and they didn't make the playoffs last year, and they've really not been a playoff team for a few years now. Not to mention, then you have what happened with Clutch and AD out of the Pelicans roster, wanting to maybe come to LA or maybe test the waters somewhere else other than New Orleans. And that got the wheels turning with the Lakers. It was no secret that the Lakers were willing to give up anybody on that roster not named LeBron James in order to get Anthony Davis. And that didn't work out. So then you have fallout from that, Justin. And I don't know what you think about that. And I know we've texted back and forth, but I really want to get your take on just socially for the team, in that locker room, around the city, on social media, and in the league in general. 22 games left in this season. You now have a team, to me, that really just looks broken compared to where they were when they were. Remember before Christmas, we talked about them being fourth place in the West. They're a long way from that now at this point. And I think the fallout might be just too big of a hump for them to get over to get back into these playoffs. And I think that's really a problem for LeBron James and his image around the league.
Well, let me throw a theory out at you, and you can tell me what you think here, because it seems to me like when LeBron's had success, he's been surrounded by guys that are either really close to him or veteran guys that are along for the ride, or sort of younger players that they've brought in who just buy into LeBron and everything that is LeBron, both good and bad. And it feels like this Lakers team was starting to do that. Like they were starting to buy in. The veteran guys, they weren't necessarily LeBron guys, but they were sort of buying in. Like, okay, we're kind of in the middle of the pack here in the Western Conference. We're winning games. We look pretty good. LeBron gets hurt, and then all the trade stuff starts where literally every single player on the Lakers team outside KCP was rumored to be traded. And I think now the whole LeBron act and all the stuff that comes along with it, it's growing old with this Lakers team and these young guys. They're not buying in. The whole playoff mode activated, that ain't working with this group. It just feels like these young guys are like, okay, you feel like you're bigger than us. You're the mogul. It's LeBron James camp, LeBron James entourage. That's all you people talk about. And then it's the rest of these pieces are all, they're all expendable. They can all be shipped out at a moment's notice. And I think that, Eric, it's affected them now that he's on the court, that they're not buying in to what he's trying to sell to them.
Yeah, as much of a fan of his as I am, it's hard for me to disagree with that. Look, they basically got the message that he signed a 4-year contract probably to close out his career. And there's one thing in mind, and that's winning more titles for LeBron James. It's not winning titles necessarily for the Lakers, although they would collect them as a team. It's winning a title for LeBron James, and Magic Johnson has now proven to the rest of the team that that's what it's about. I think there's damage done here, and I think there's significant damage done here.
Yeah.
You're right. That team was starting to gel a little bit before Christmas, before LeBron got injured. And I also think you're right about guys like Rondo and Lance Stevenson and JaVale McGee and guys that they brought in that were veterans that were willing to say, you know what, I'm at the end of my career too. Maybe for McGee, it's a little bit easier to go with the flow being from the Warriors, but the other guys, it's like, yeah, I'll take the chance at winning a ring or two in the next couple of years if I can just bide my time and kind of play the right game here in Los Angeles. But if you're a Kuzma or you're a Josh Hart, or you're I'll stretch and say Lonzo Ball, or you're a Brandon Ingram, you're a KCP, whatever the case is, you've now gotten the message from your franchise that you are expendable at the name of LeBron James. That's a bad place to be. And it's not just one or two guys, Justin. That's the thing. It's the whole damn roster. Yeah. So that's the problem. And I think they're broken now. I think LeBron has to look in the mirror. As much of a fan of his as I am, we were texting about it earlier when we were comparing show notes. I firmly believe that he's in the wrong on this one. I defended him when he wanted to cast blame in Cleveland on Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith because he fought for those guys to get paid. And then when they didn't play well, I think he has the right to say, look, guys, I did you a solid. I got you paid, and you're playing like absolute trash out here. That was my argument in Cleveland. This is a completely different situation. This is LeBron James trying to control the narrative in LA. He has no right to control these players and decide whether they're going to be shipped out or staying in there and whatever. He's basically telling them, you have no value except what you're bringing to me if I win a championship. I think it's a dangerous game that they're playing in LA, and it's a ticking time bomb because, like I said, he is at the end of his career. There is no doubt about it. Yes, he is the strongest 16th year player that we've probably ever seen, but every year that goes by is 1 year closer to the end for LeBron James. They just don't have time to screw around like this. That's my take on it, Justin.
And the ticking time bomb part, Eric, I see is now every time they lose, LeBron just trashes the team. It's one thing after another. They're not ready to play. You don't need to be distracted. If you're distracted, you need to leave here. And then you watch the game, or even if you just watch the highlight, and now it's starting to get picked up where their Sports Center, for example, is showing 10, 12, 15 defensive plays where LeBron is doing nothing. Like we were joking around this morning. I sent you a clip on Twitter. LeBron just comes up and sags in the paint, and a 3-point shooter stands there, and LeBron makes no move at all. And then he turns around like it's someone else's fault when it's clearly his guy. And it's happening more and more where he's not setting the tone on the defensive side of the ball. And all I hear about is, he has to play 40 minutes a game. No, he doesn't. If he's not giving you anything on the defensive side of the ball, then you need to scale him back to 34, 35 minutes and take your chances. You're losing anyways. What do you have to lose? And it kind of gets into the next step of like, well, where's this team go in terms of coaching? Because Luke Walton doesn't seem to be the guy that, quote unquote, LeBron's camp wants in there. You always see him doing the same thing that he did in Cleveland when it was David Blatt. He'd always run to Tyronn Lue. He does the same thing now in LA where he's going to Brian Shaw, and he seems like he pays no attention to Luke Walton. So it feels like Walton can't have a conversation with him even to get LeBron engaged on the defensive side. And even looking at like defensive rating, for example, in the games that the Lakers have won, LeBron has an individual defensive rating of about 95. In the games they lose, it's 125. And that would rank basically out of 504 players, that would rank at about 497. And I've never even heard of the 10 guys that would be above that. So it's a mess in LA, Eric, but that's the whole thing with LeBron now. And again, I don't know if it's stat grabbing for him, because the one thing I noticed the last 3 years where his defense has really, really gotten poor, his rebounding is going up. So is this a sort of the Russell Westbrook argument now that's going on where everybody's looking at stats and triple doubles, and LeBron on the defensive side is more worried about getting those cheap rebounds, and he can get 8, 9 defensive rebounds, picks up 1 offensive. Now he's got his double digits and he's on his way to his triple double. I don't understand what's happening with LeBron, because he's never been this bad, Eric, of a defensive player. And when your team is desperate and you've activated playoff mode, it shouldn't be this glaringly obvious how bad he is on the defensive side. And really all you have to do is watch a Lakers game. Don't focus on the ball. Just watch LeBron. He does nothing. I mean, he's definitely trying to rest on the defensive side, but it's absolutely killing them right now, Eric.
Yeah, and I'll play Homer on that just a little bit, just to play devil's advocate, and maybe you can just tell me, no, Eric, you're absolutely wrong. I think we're also looking at, we've never seen 34-year-old LeBron James before. Yeah, we've seen 28-year-old LeBron James in the 60th game of the season. We've never seen 34-year-old LeBron James in the 60th game of the season. We don't know what the schemes are. We don't know what the frustrations with the coaching is. I've always thought that you've got to bring in a coach to LeBron James. You can't have LeBron James come to a coach. The only time that's ever worked was with Spoelstra, and that's because you had Pat Riley, and he was the boss.
But he wanted Spoelstra out.
Exactly, and he had a bigger boss that said, no, that's not going to happen. But like you brought up with David Blatt, I mean, you can't bring LeBron to a coach and have it work out. So Walton's going to be gone at some point. That's just how that's just how it works here. But on the defensive side, I think it's a little bit of all of those things that you mentioned. I think it's the style of the NBA. I think they do, if you're a forward or a guard, I think you do kind of lays off the basket a little bit because you know those longer rebounds are coming. We've talked about that with Curry and Klay Thompson, certainly Russell Westbrook, James Harden, guys that from their position are getting triple doubles at a extremely high rate that they never really did before in years past, decades ago especially. So I think that's just part of the NBA now. I'm not going to excuse LeBron's bad defense.